can be mortal.
Ooh, we are very much indeed the Mere Mortals. Welcome back, Mere Mortalites. It's the 26th of October, 9 a.m. on a Sunday. That's when we go live. So if you want to join us live, make sure you tune in at 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. You got Juan here.
Kyrin here.
And we're going to be talking about life with Ragrets. Kind of. So I think it's a good wording. And I put this thought, Kyrin asked, what are we going to talk about? Now, I wanted to independently do a conversation myself on just things now in my 30s that kind of like things in my 30s that I wish I knew in my 20s. But not exactly that, in that it's particularly like wisdom items, although maybe some of them will pop up. It was more the idea of not regrets in itself, although we can talk about that for sure.
Yeah.
But if I was to give advice to my younger self, now that I've gone through my 20s, what sort of advice would I give? And honestly, that sounds like we're old people. It's still similar advice I think I'd provide to myself now. So it's almost a reviewing back on the decade that was, and if I had to like go through it again, what might have been slightly different, what might have been the things I would have doubled down, tripled down on. And I think ultimately it probably will eke out anyways into what we're doing in our current decade of the 30s. So it's kind of in relation to that, but there's a context setting I'm going to begin with.
Okay, yeah.
Full context set. In that, I think often when people do these sort of reflections, and I listen to a couple of people doing that, I think Nick Bear was recently doing something very similar about like what I've learned in my 30s, and a few others popped up with something similar as well. It's interesting. Whenever you talk about a topic or you want to do something, you always will just find it. Obviously, it's like that concept of, you know, you think of the red car and you see red cars all over the place. It's the same. You know, it's harder to think of, what am I going to be talking about in this podcast? And all of a sudden, I see 3 other podcasters or other people talking about it. So
it's a good topic. I brought it up with 2 or 3 other people this week, and we had really fun conversations about it. So
yeah, we had some people on the Discord as well, Petar and Cole as well, talking about it. So it encourages the conversation that comes out of it. But the context setting that I was going to say was, and I've had this conversation in different levels before with different people, is as much as what we're going to say, and it's the feedback that you give to your younger self, or feedback to yourself, or feedback to others, or whatever advice, again, a lot of what you did, whether good, bad, didn't do, did do really well, whatever, still put you in today's position. So you got to have the context of, as much as we're going to say and advise things, it can only come from hindsight, and it's very often really difficult to then kind of forward predict what will happen if you were to change some of those things. Although you can have a good enough reasonable view, I think, to certain degrees. Again, if I all of a sudden just eat McDonald's every single day, I can probably tell you what's going to happen in the future. But when you're looking at things in hindsight, you kind of have to remember, you know, you can't just be stupid and go, oh yeah, but if I you know, not talk to any human and train for 9 hours a day, I could have become really jacked. Yes, but that has other downsides that you probably would have regretted even more so.
It'd be, if you had the time machine, you go give the advice, then the new version of you goes through, and then they reach 33 and they're like, all right, podcast time, what are we going to talk about? Oh, what I would have done in my 20s. And then the advice they'd give to themselves is the complete opposite of what they ended up actually doing. And so then you're just stuck in this like feedback loop. So yeah, I could certainly see that something like
happening.
That
Now, so what I want to do, you might have some items listed down. I have none listed down, but mine are quite easy because I've been thinking about this for a little while. Sure. But I actually wanted to begin, and again, people who go on our Discord or like in the inner circle of the Mere Mortals, you're going to get first dibs if you want to actually put something as part of the topics. But I want to talk about Petar's comment, which I know you were talking to him already about, so I wanted to kind of explore in this particular podcast, which was, I'll read it out, right? His note that he sent through yesterday was, I don't live with big regrets in my life. I've come to the realization that every decision I made in the past was done with the best evidence and ideas I had at the time. You can be mad at yourself for not having better information, but that's not really a regret. That's just being mad at the cards you were dealt. That's being mad at your circumstances, kind of like being mad at the weather. And I like this note from him from Gandalf: a wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. And I know you were saying, you know, in relation to that, the feeling of it, or the regrets of it as well. So I think part of the context setting, and from what Petar was saying, I'm like, yeah, it's so true. Like everything I'm going to say in relation to like my younger self or feedback to my younger person, I'm going to be like, absolutely. I'm not like negating it, nor am I looking back at it with any regrets. In fact, if I had to like point blank be asked like, oh, well, what are the regrets in the 20s? None really feel like regrets because in some way, shape, or order, it was all like sort of brought up now to where I am today. So take that, and if there's a particular regret I'm talking about it, I'll be like, oh, okay, maybe I do regret that. But is there any, based on like what Peter was saying, was there any regret or any particular idea that came up to you? You were like, yeah, like I was too harsh on myself on my 20s or in something else. Like that's like very obvious for people.
Yeah. Well, first of all, fuck the sun. It's too hot today. It's not a happy chappy over here.
It is warm. It is warm.
I'm joking. When I think of the regret as in it's something now which makes me feel something. So that's kind of how I'm categorizing a regret. Something where I kind of cringe at it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Probably that's the most accurate feeling for me. So not getting a perfect score on a test or something. I don't look at that now and cringe. It's just like,
sure.
Oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Even if it would have been nice to win a soccer game. I remember like scoring an own goal. I remember, losing the final. And it's like, oh, I had this one chance when the ball came in from a corner and if I just hit it perfectly. I don't regret not scoring that or doing better. Sure. It's just, okay, that happened.
Yep.
A memorable moment, but I don't cringe. The only things I really cringe of are, it was in my 20s. Almost dying because I overtook a B double on the stretch going from Brisbane to Emerald. Mm-hmm. And I very much could have died had another car been coming in the opposite direction because I was in their lane. That one, I still wake up and I cringe. And that one I regret, even though everything ended up fine. Another one was actually even just like this last year where it was, not even in my 20s. Just a girl was making it very obvious that she wanted me to ask her out, and like she could not have done more. This is where I'm like, oh, okay, I understand why there's girls on forums who are like, I fucking did everything, and this guy just like ignored me, blah blah blah, and I completely understand that now. That one I cringe because I just go, I had known better. Like Peter says, like I couldn't have, with all the information available. I had all. No,
you had all the information.
Like, there was no more information that could have made this more obvious. And same with the other one. Like all the information was there. Mm-hmm. I knew driving to Emerald was the most dangerous thing I'd be doing like all year, and I still did something really fucking stupid and dangerous.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and so that's a good point because it's like. So with the driving, so I similarly can remember overtaking a truck going down a hill or something, and similar thing where it's like, oh my god, immediately afterwards you're like, man, probably shouldn't have done that. Like you could have just waited the 30 seconds, just waiting behind the truck.
Absolutely.
And again, it's one of those where information, like everyone has that information, and how front of mind you have it, I guess, is probably the other problem. In that, look, a lot of like probability, statistically, you're probably more likely to die driving than you are walking or even being on a plane, but crashing on a plane and dying is just seen as so much more maybe horrific or likely for whatever reason, or getting bitten by a shark, so that people are afraid of the ocean versus afraid of the road. Yeah, that information is widely available, but I don't know, just as humans we just decide to rationalize it, or no, not even rationalize it, we just are emotional beings. Like, yeah, that's okay though, that's fine, that's not going to happen to me, that's just what happens in all these other cases that are not ours. So yes, we might have all the information, but even with the information, it's like just generally humans are not going to, take the right action with that anyways.
Yeah. When people talk about regrets more, I feel it's, and I think I sent a link in the Discord, but it's the top 5 most people on their deathbed interviewed. It was from a book on kind of like palliative care type thing from quite a while ago. And the typical stuff in it was, I wish I hadn't worked as much because, and this was from men mostly, because I've missed out so many moments, especially of my children's lives. I wish I had let myself be happier. I wish I hadn't earned as much money or something like that. And there was a couple of other ones. And for those ones, those are the ones where I regret isn't the right word for what I feel. So if I think of being with a partner who I was scared of breaking up with because I didn't want to be alone, but I knew like staying with her long term wasn't the right thing, and yet we were continuing to go further and further into a relationship. That's one where it's like, yes, I kind of had all the information. I knew what should be done, what the right thing to be done is. But that's one where yeah, regret's just not the right word for it. And I was thinking of some things like fear, overcoming a fear. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to really make a change. When I was in Emerald the same time, so I would have been 20, and this was before having that first girlfriend. Still a virgin, still had like the only girl I'd ever really kissed had been a drunken one at after party of formal who was just trying to beat her friend and kissing the most guys. Like, yeah, super romantic. So obviously I had not had like a actual female connection, especially sexually. And that's one where I'm like, I hit fucking rock bottom. And that's what actually prompted me to change. Because I was in Emerald, had a shit sleep. I didn't know anyone there other than the kind of like one of the graduates, or not graduates, guys who I was in my mining course, but we had different schedules, so I'd never see them. Working shift work, I was eating like shit, I wasn't training. All of that culminated to one night where I was like, I need to fucking change my life. Like, this is, I can't keep going like this. Do I regret not being able to do more and learning from that earlier in my life, in my teens, for example? No, that's one where it's like, okay, I had all the information in a way, but it wasn't, the information wasn't enough. I needed something extra. And that extra was, maybe you could call it time itself. Maybe you could call it like, I guess the negative motivation of getting too far away, of like, of just more pain. Maybe, I guess you could say pain is information in a sense, but yeah, it's something like that. So those ones, which are the typical ones that people would say they regret, like, sure, I've spent, I guess you could say I've wasted a lot of time, but that one was, I don't feel like there could have really been anything that could have been done to have made it better. And this will get on to like the advice section, where it's like, I'm not sure more information wasn't the answer to solving this problem. Yeah. No, and I think that's, let's get into that. I think it's the rest of this podcast almost. I kind of want to imagine, like, again, sitting down with 20-year-old or 25-year-old self. And again, it's like, the way I was thinking is, what sort of advice would I pass on to that individual that isn't just information in that sense? Because you're right, like, just going a directly statement of, you've got to change your life and you've got to go do these things. Yeah. If you do this, this is what will happen, you know. Not necessarily, and exactly, like, not necessarily will that happen. Yeah. And we've talked about it on this podcast before around the importance of the actions, for sure. And if the outcome might or might not happen, but it's the generators, the actions that might give you the trophies, the things that you're after, but it might not. And it's the actions themselves which are the important things. But that's sort of the going in position of this conversation being like, okay, what would you tell yourself? Again, equally, this might then apply to someone else listening to this and be like, okay, I might listen to Kyrin's advice here and be like, I guess he's experienced something and comes out from it. So, sure. What were your regrets? Do you have any that you would say? Again, similar with like driving ones. Like anything that you cringe about, you think about, because those two that I mentioned, those are the ones where I'll wake up and I'll if I think of it in the night, most of the time they'll just be like like a real cringe bad. Of it. Yeah. None, like definitely none that now that I can think, like in a similar vein of I wake up or I still think about him once a year, once a week, or once a day. No, nothing that I could like off the top of my mind right now. If I think back, I go, there was definitely some nights where, you know, maybe we were out for too long and then you're super tired and you have a shitty weekend, but it's not real regrets. It's like, it's life, that those experiences that you go through. And again, you could probably
equally find like that. Yeah, but then I got to experience this and this story. So there's a balance to all of it. Apart from some driving experiences where like equally driving behind a truck and going around. But again, it's not like I ever think about it until it randomly gets brought up by somebody else. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened.
I was chatting with a friend yesterday, and he was talking about how he had this real party phase, just 3 years of just debauchery almost, you know, and it was like a house. So he was surrounded by people. Like he'd be at work, and his friends would be drinking very heavily at 11 a.m. on a Thursday, and he knows as soon as he gets home, like he's gonna have like a beer thrust in his hand.
Yeah, that's what's next. Yep.
And he was explaining this, and I was really interested because I'm like, well, this does not match up with your personality right now. And then he was explaining like, oh yeah, my childhood was I didn't really have one because I had to help my mum. She had been divorced, or her partner had left her with like twins, so they were like his siblings. And he essentially had to be a dad up until the age of like 19. And I go, okay, well, that makes sense. Like you didn't get to have a childhood and fun. So of course, like
now that's
the overreaction to that will be 3 years of crazy fun.
Yep.
Which he then goes to say like, yeah, do I wish I hadn't done it? Yes, in a way, but I needed to do it in a way. So, what can you say to that? And I kind of feel like that same about my my ex. Like, yes, I wish I hadn't wasted a lot of her time, and I guess even my time in a sense. But it was almost like I needed to do it to kind of, I don't know, reassure myself, feel good about myself. So,
I'm almost wondering if the concept of regret in itself can only be either truly appreciated or really only makes sense when you're like over the barrier, closer to demise, like closer to death, as opposed to just slightly removed from it. So we're talking about it as we're in our 30s, talking about our 20s, and yes, we can come up with some regrets, but let's just say, human with this, life ended at 40 or 35, let's just say. I think we would be looking back at something and going like, oh, fuck, like I really regret like forgetting all of this negativity of people and just focusing on friends and family. Or actually I spent way too much time caring about running and getting this time. Who cares? I've only got 2 years. If it were more along those lines, if there was a definitive end and we were closer towards that, I think the concept of regret would be stronger. But right now, it doesn't feel that way. So like when you're talking about the regrets of like the palliative care or people who are close to the end of their life, it is hanging out with friends or the social connections or, hey, I shouldn't have been earning too much money and care about your kids. You ask, and that's probably why it's so hard to conceptualize to a 35-year-old CEO or COO or top-level executive or whatever, put yourself in the position of a strong performer in work and you're making lots of money and you're being able to travel, that I don't think you would say that it's a regret that you're doing that versus, hey, I'm seeing my kids 2 hours less per day. Even if 60 years in the future, there will be a regret. It's almost not internalized in any way as a younger individual who's not close to mortality in that way.
That makes sense to me because Peter also mentioned that one of his strategies was essentially like beating himself up for something that had been done. So, and I won't spill the backstory, but it's, one of those things where it's like he had an impact on someone else's life that ended very negatively for that person. But the direct linkage, like how much of what his actions did actually correlated to that person, I don't even think is up for debate in terms of he put way too much on himself. It's almost like a selfish thing in a way. And I'm guilty of this as myself. Like, did that girl not text me back because I did something? And it's like, it's probably nothing to do with you, man. Like, fucking get off your high horse. And his strategy was to beat himself up, essentially, to feel guilty for it, to, almost through his pain absolve himself. Whereas, that's one strategy, obviously a unhelpful strategy. And, eventually he had to move on from that and forgive himself. And, the other strategy for that would be like, okay, let's say let's say even if this was my fault, what can I do to absolve myself from this in a more positive way? And this could be, let's say you've accidentally hit someone with a car. Like it's your fault. It's your fault in a sense. They died, but perhaps they were walking out onto the street and it's like 50-50. You can destroy your life, drink yourself into oblivion, and feel like that's a way of solving it. Or perhaps you could, try and do things for road safety or volunteer as like a lollipop man or whatever, and have a positive impact to solve that. But both of those require time. So
True.
If you're at the end of your life, you don't have either of those to really do. So that's where it's just like pure regret now. Like I got nothing.
There's no further thing you can do from
there's
it.
literally nothing I can do, good or bad, that will make this
affected in any other way. Yeah, just the thing that's happened. Yeah. So I think, look at. I think the concept of regret has to be seen with the time availability that you have to take like further effects, I guess. So I'm gonna go into my first advice piece.
Okay.
It's a little. I'll take it off a slightly different tangent here. Maybe some people won't agree with it, but I'll try to generalize a little bit if it's not too extreme. But I think, again, sitting down, giving some advice to my 20-year-old self, I would say be more selfish. More selfish on the skills and on building your character. And so that concept, and again, I say these out loud almost in the sense of I imagine some of the things will definitely apply into my 30s and beyond. Some might not. But what I look back on and the things I probably like saw and experienced in my 20s was, one, you have more capacity in your 20s to just apply yourself to the world, right? Energy, time, usually you have less commitments. As you get older, commitments seem to just increase in generalness. Of course, it doesn't have to be applied to everyone, but specifically to me, I could see that your responsibilities and what you're accountable for just grows as you get older. And I look back going, one of those advice pieces would have been, now get more selfish. Get more selfish on the things that you care about, on skill set building, on character building. And so what that looks in distinctly, like putting it into action, would have been, no, read that extra book rather than thinking that making time for, going and catching up with a random person is. If you think that you can put in the extra half hour per day to increase your skill set at, again, handstand or running or training, I'm generalizing it there, do that over and above other things that you think are more selfless. Now, some people might be like, whoa, what the hell? What do you mean? Are you saying like, don't go do charity? Don't be selfless and go help out a mate and whatnot. And again, there's fuzzy boundaries then in terms of like who you support. But I'm very looking back at it as stringent on, I think, being more selfish and becoming a better human in general by your skills, by your character, will end up multiplying in terms of value to the world, to your network, to the closest ones around you in time, as opposed to being really selfless at the beginning and not having that built up of skill and character that can then benefit way more people. So the first one was, I think I could have been more selfish.
Okay.
Could be more selfish on my skills and character. And again, I won't be uber extreme with this. I'm not saying be selfish on everything, right? So again, that would exclude like with your closest connections, your family, your relationships. No, not selfish in those arenas. But I remember when I was in my 20s going to a networking event for business professionals, and there was business professionals in the IT sector to talk about whatever. And I remember having some pizza and some beers. And like you said, it's not a regret because sure, I learned something and I had some conversations and whatnot. However, if I had to pitch that again, being selfish and increasing my skill set on something else or training or a whole host of other things, if I had to give advice, I'd be like, that net's going to give me more benefits than what this would have gotten me. And it's not a regret. It's just plain and simple. That would have gotten me closer to the skills and characteristics I wanted versus this thing that's completely forgotten and I would never know what it is. And again, that can also apply to selfishness and being like, hey, if you want to travel to fucking Vietnam and you're going to do it, like, you don't have to wait for your friends. You don't have to, whatever. Go build that experience, that connectivity. And that might be over and above, and it sounds crazy to say. So again, listening to this if you're younger, some people might go, no, but I want to save up my money to buy a house. I'd kind of go, if the selfish piece is you want to experience and increase your skill set and characteristic, there's time for that, a little bit later on. Do it when you can. That's kind of like my pitch for my younger self, which I think I would have pushed back on when I was younger. So that's why I would have to just be like, be more selfish at the things that build your skill and character.
Okay, yeah. This isn't advice. This is more for myself looking back as just analyzing myself. The complete opposite for me. More selflessness would have been a boon. You mentioned as you get older, you get these responsibilities. I do want to add, you don't have to. This is one thing that I feel people they fall into without thinking. Like you can certainly construct your life where you don't need to have all of these responsibilities. Now, there's some really good things that come from them for sure. And like, if I take myself, for example, I'm probably like, dare I say, like the least responsible person ever. And when I say that, I mean, there's just not a whole lot riding on me. People don't really need to rely on me for things. There's not a work colleague who's like, fuck, I hope Kyrin pulls through this weekend.
Does this and whatever.
And does this deliverable. There's friends. Yeah, sure, I guess with friendships, like there's responsibility. I just don't think it's the right word for that. Like, I want to do nice things for you and for Joey, Manchill, all of our other friends. Manchill's getting married this next year. There's somewhat of an obligation responsibility for me to show up to that. But in general, I don't have a lot of those things. Now, I actually want some of them. I want to have the family and the partner and the kids and stuff. So, there's certain times of life. But if I had spent an extra half an hour every day on learning another language, on, doing more handstands, on improving XYZ thing, reading another book, for me, that wouldn't have added. I'd certainly be a little bit better in all of those things. Would that be a particular boon to my life right now? I'd say probably not, because it's more in like you said, it's in the process of doing these things, which is a one-arm handstand would be great. I'd love to have it right now, but it's because I'm working towards it, not because I can just have it.
Sure. Yep.
And so when I think back, it's like, all right, if I had just told myself to do more of that, to be more selfish, I wouldn't have had like more time of being in the zone of feeling like, oh, I'm progressing and I'm working on myself and things like this. It probably should have been like, hey, you are too selfish, especially when it comes to like mentally thinking of every impact that I have is impacting other people. And which is a very selfish thing, whereas everyone else is like, they're doing their own things. They probably don't even realize you're an entity in the world. So, even in a way saying like, you know what, you're probably doing some things for the sake of just, how would I say it? Like a meditation type aspect of not focusing on yourself so much and putting that focus on other people. And then, ideally, hopefully I would be doing good things for them. So not necessarily like charity work. I probably wouldn't have really been interested in that, but having more fruitful conversations or connecting with my mum, for example, if I could have done that whilst she still had the mental capabilities, that would have been a real boon. And I would have had more memories. I would have had a deeper connection with her and known her better. So things like that, giving advice to that version of myself, I don't think would have worked. So that's why I wouldn't say advice, but like analyzing myself.
That's the context. And I think, and I think there's a slight move away from the extreme that I was trying to make sense of. So like, selfish in the things that matter for you, skills and characteristics, but hard for a younger individual. And again, I still think hard even for myself today, and probably hard for a 40-year-old, but to know what the circle of not influence, but of care and relationship that you really care about, because I would have given myself the feedback, or again, analyzing it back and go, I probably was caring about 300 or 400 people, friends, people that are like, they've invited me and let's go catch up and have a drink or something like that. Where what I'm meaning by selfish there is like, I wish I would have taken the point of being like, don't worry about that. Go hang out with the family. Don't worry about that. Go train. Don't worry about that. So that's the selfish aspect of it. But I do push it slightly more than just the neutral here, and being like, even like some things where you're sitting on the fence, I'd be like, nah, max your stats. I'm not so like, when people say like, max your max looks and stats like that. Kind of like that, like an example, but max your stats in terms of your fitness and your capability and the things that and the things that you can learn, and not just the knowledge for knowledge's sake, but learning the meta skill of learning, going through all those phases. That, and especially attuned to the fact that when you're younger, you just got more energy to be able to do it, and probabilistically less responsibilities. Yes, you can have still have low responsibilities as you go. However, there's high percentages that you'll have to look after somebody, right? Whether it's parents, whether it's kids, whether it's yourself more, whether it's you just have low energy. You've just got more responsibilities either to yourself or others as you grow older. So make the most of it when you're younger.
I'm reading this book on extroversion, introversion, in particular introversion at the moment. And I think that's pretty much like the dominant reason that you would say that. And I would say mine, which is just, I didn't have 400 friends or acquaintances who needed catching up with, and if I did, I didn't view them as such, or I didn't have the social skills that these invitations would be coming my way, for example. Whereas for you, the opposite is the case. So I'll probably be talking about that in a future episode.
I had moments. I had like years ago now, 5-6 years ago, we had a group of people that I knew, where we had what was called TFS at the time, and again we called it that because that was the software that we used to use as well. But what we termed it as Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's every Thursday, every Friday, and every Saturday we'd go out, we'd go do something.
Okay.
Like drinks, events, activities, right? And it was like big activities, and we'd go late into the night, and then you'd be tired the next day, and you'd still have work on the Friday, and then you back it up on the Saturday. And it was times like that when, again, this was like almost random people now, if I really reflect on it, people that I don't really interact with to this day. Was that really favorable for me? Again, not regrets, but an advice to go, you could probably be leveraging those time domains better in a more selfish way. Again, it could have just been with family. It could have just been training. It could have just been learning something new. It could have been whatever you want to put down. But if I had been a little bit more selfish, I wouldn't have gone and done those things, or some of it. Sure, do some, but not all of the things that would have presented at the time, purely to be like, oh yeah, but so-and-so invited me, and yeah, we should go do that. Like, it's like, no. What does Juan at the time want to do? What does your actual self want to do that's going to better yourself?
I've probably had 5, 10, 15 times in my life where I've had a conflicting schedule and had two invitations for the same
thing. Yeah.
That's probably like the max I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're like, yeah, that's happened.
That's like
a couple of times. It still happens today. It still happens today, but definitely happened a lot more when I was in my 20s.
Sure.
So that was my one. What's another one? What's one you got?
Should we do the Boostagram Lounge and then?
Should we go Boostagram Lounge?
Yeah. Okay. And then get on to some of the actual advice that I have for myself.
So Boostagram Lounge, and once again, the Boostagram Lounge is what we just.
Yeah. I'll explain it this time. So for those who don't know, this is a value for value podcast. We ask that you support the show. And you can do this many different ways: time, talent, and treasure. We'll focus on the treasure aspect at the moment, which is sending in a payment to the show of support, because it does cost a lot to host all of these things, the audio, keeping the cameras up going, all the various different fees that we have producing this. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. One is via the PayPal link, but we also love it if you can do it via a modern podcasting app. That's where you can send some support directly within the app. Places like True Fans, Fountain, Podverse, Castomatic, Curocaster, Podcast Guru, for example. And we read out those messages that come on the show. And did we have any this week? There was one.
We did. Yeah.
All right, Beanie's coming on.
So
that's it.
We've got Magnolia.
The Boostagram Beanie.
Magnolia Mayhem.
Oh yeah.
Do you know Magnolia Mayhem?
No, I don't.
Okay. I don't either. So that's why it's interesting. I was like, okay,
It's a new one.
It's a new one. Row of Ducks, 2,222 sats.
Quack, quack.
So thank you very much, Magnolia. I'm happily married, and this last episode still really helped me work through some things that I believe was the conversation that we had last week in relation to
attracting women.
So that was very interesting. From a married individual.
Thank you. You'd probably have more insights into this, and maybe it's a episode in itself. But I guess like dating when you're in a long-term relationship and when you're married, and how that changes, and keeping attraction alive. I've probably never really gotten to that far into a stage where I'd really need to consider it, whether routine has become so mundane.
Yeah, I think I'd probably, the absolutely off the cuff advice I'd give on that one is the first change I think happens at a year. The second more really drastic change happens at about 3 years. And then definitely if you have kids, changes dramatically different as well. That's probably as close as I know for the moment. But the 3 year change, I'd say, is a very definitive different change. I think by that point, it's either like the 1 year is you've gone past the kind of honeymoon stage and you're now into like the real life, and you're talking about futures and what are you doing with life and accommodation and finances. But 3 years is where like rubber meets the road, and both you've been together long enough to experience most things. Now you're going through a cycle of like, okay, is it just the same thing again? That's real decision points of living together, not living together, finances, not finances. That's when you're talking nitty gritty details of life. Like it's three and nothing, or 3 and forever type of like feeling. But yeah, there is a cycle at that point where it's like, okay, are we doing the same year again? Or, you know, are both people up for like differentiations, or is one then need a difference and the other one doesn't? I think it's 3. 3 is the big number that I would say from that perspective. And again, I'm sure people who are together or married or whatever for much longer periods of time as well, that might be like, well, 25 years, you know, something like this roughly happens. So I'm sure it'll be something where maybe when your kids grow up as well, if you have kids, that would be another transition. But I think it's a very
when they leave
lots of different changeovers, I'm sure. That could be, it would have its own whole podcast. All right,
thank you for the boost.
Yes, thank you very much.
Really appreciate that. Okay, piece of advice that I would give to myself. Probably. So my context for this is like, any advice that I gave to myself would need to be reasonable, or like reasoning, as in I'm just imagining like, let's say, various different times in my life in the 20s, but at certain stages, like some things would hit more because you know, the difference between 20 and 29 is pretty drastic. But it would need to kind of be within the realm of like possibility of like, you can do this. This is something that is possible. So in when I was 20 and still a virgin, talking about something where it's like, you know, you could meet a girl and then have sex with her within like 45 minutes. That would just be like, that's impossible. that can't happen. But you know, telling that to me later would certainly be like, oh, okay, yeah, I've had more experience. I could see how that could maybe happen. So it would need to be kind of reasonable and not too far out of where my fixed mind was already. So there were certain things, beliefs that I had in my 20s, which were like very fixed. And the only thing I think I could do would be to give some advice that would set me on the path, which would take me away from that. So there was all of these things that pickup artists would mention it in the last weeks, where it was, these were beliefs that I had. You know, you have to wait 3 days before messaging a girl back. If she's wearing red, that means she's like, it's like a signal that she's looking for sex. You know, doing negging and backhanded compliments, this is the way to blah, blah, blah. All of those sorts of things, a lot of them were fixed in my mind as these are
That's the way. Yep.
this is how it works. So going too far beyond that, I know if I'd said to myself like, oh yeah, attract women through honesty, beta, that wouldn't have been helpful. So number one here was a reiteration that any problem could be solved via effort. So anything that I really was struggling with, there were some problems that felt insurmountable and took me a long time to overcome. One of these would be getting a muscle up, for example. I never had a belief that I could actually really do it. And starting from not being able to do a single pull-up when I went to the gym for the first time, that was eye-opening. I remember just going up to it and try to pull, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even do one. Like, I thought I'd be able to get at least like 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, like,
no,
it should be,
there was just nothing happening, just hanging, and it's like, oh, shit. Going to a muscle up from that is such a long, convoluted process that it felt impossible. So I guess just a reiteration that effort can solve it, and the effort needs to probably be combined with thoughtful effort in a way. So not just blindly fucking going to the gym and just trying to pull up every single time. It's like, okay, use a weighted machine so it takes some of the weight off, so then you can actually do the movement itself, and things like that. Use bands when you progress far enough. So that one, it kind of links to another one I've got coming up, but just that reiteration, effort. You can solve this via effort. Don't forget that. Know this. Know this, that this is something that can be solved.
Yep. All right. Well, mine's the one I'll call out. Mine's very similar to that. Well, linked. I was going to give advice because I think that's a good call out. That's got to be like positional to the person as well. Because if it's too far out of the way, it's like, what are you talking about, man? Like,
I would have heard that advice anyway and brushed it off.
Sure. Yep. I would have said, get obsessed with the things that you care about and become not even just obsessed, be obsessive about them. I would have just kept it like that general. I wouldn't have been like specific. What I really mean, like the prime example is in training or in fitness, but I wouldn't have said it in that way to my younger self, because I think there might have been some aversion. Like if I said, get obsessed about becoming a good runner, my younger self would have been like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Like, no, I don't want to run. I don't care for that. But I would have just said, get obsessive with the things that you care about. And again, looking back at my younger self, I go, training and gym training and normal fitness, all the things I did, I probably put a good amount of effort towards it, right? I put lots of great effort towards it. But effort aside, I could see now in the way that I do some things, in the way that I've seen other people do, I could be still way more obsessive in but be finicky about the way that you do the pull up and the muscle up and the skill set, and repeat it and do it better and document it and track it and all of those ways that you could potentially get better at it. Of the things that I care about, I could have cared more. I could have been more obsessed about the little details. And over time, again, it's not just the one time that you do the pull up correctly. It's do that multiplied by the 10,000 times that you do it, and all of a sudden, twofold. One, you're not just better at the particular skill set and the movement, but moving forward into the future, it's because of the way you were doing it, you're now got better longevity on your joints and your bones. You were able to load up your bone better and your musculature better, so that longevity-wise, it actually ends up working out even more so in my benefit, right? At the moment, I'm tracking I want to get 3 reps, 6 times body weight for the particular lifts, right? But if I was really obsessed about training, and it doesn't have to be at those times, because again, I wouldn't have cared too much longevity focus, but I've gone, keep it simple. I was going to be as strong and as fast as I can and become really obsessed with that. It will be beneficial all the way into the future in longevity, because you're just going to have sarcopenia and you're going to lose your VO2 levels and all of that as you get older. Just life, nature, that happens. So if I become really obsessed and even better at that, would have set me in a better position as long as I don't get injured, right? And I think that's the other part, is just being obsessive about all of it to make sure that you're injury-free. Doing deloads. I was talking about this earlier, like, oh my God, I've done my first deload week. being obsessive about like, no, I'm doing a 6-week like mesocycle, and after that I'm going to do 1 week deload, and I'm going to be like really stringent on this and be able to do that, and my stretching and my training and whatever, all of those various things. Again, is fitness specific, but there was a few other things that I also cared about. If I become really obsessive over it, which maybe coincides with becoming selfish, I can only see that being a benefit. But obsessive at the things that I cared about. That would be the advice to my younger self. And again, all I'm saying all these things applies to today's world as well. It looks different, obviously, in the things that I care about. But again, there's sort of advice pieces that works real well for when I was younger, and I think applies now in slightly different ways moving forward as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a good one. One that just came to mind then for me was, I guess, the emotional investigations. So the amount of time I've spent on doing things which made me feel bad, and I didn't really investigate why I was feeling bad. That was probably a bunch of wasted time, which was unproductive. So an example of this would be actually even recently, where I did improve was, so I'm, don't really enjoy the dating apps at the moment. So I'm going out and just trying to meet women in real life, and I need to do some shopping. All right, I'll go to like a big shopping center and I'll wander around here for a little bit, and I'll do my shopping, but
go for a wander as well.
There's opportunities to meet people there as well. And I went there, and so it was like a Saturday, I think, or Sunday maybe, and I was fucking stressed out. I was feeling bad in there, and I kind of came out and like I didn't do any approaches or anything, and I was like kind of beating myself up about it. And this was the first time I actually kind of set myself aside and was like, okay, what exactly about that made you feel bad? Because you did something very similar like 2 days before, and you went out and to Newstead, had really lovely conversation, or maybe it was the week before, and met a girl there. And even if there was other days where you didn't even meet any, but maybe you said hi to some people, and it was almost like the exact same outcome in which like nothing happened. But one time I felt really good, and one time I felt really bad. And so investigating it more, I was like, oh well, probably part of it's the environment. It's really loud. Everyone's like stressing about, running about in a shopping center. There's the demographics there are different, so it's a lot more like young teens, and so you're seeing girls passing by. They're not really the age range you're looking for, but you could still do an approach on them, I guess, technically. But that's not the demographic. So everything about it was just like, oh, okay, I'm feeling bad, and this is the reasons why for it. And I wish I'd done a lot more kind of investigations into that when I was younger. Like, okay, you're feeling bad in this moment when you're playing soccer. Like, what is the reason? And it's like, oh, you know what? That guy had said like a mean comment about you, and it's like, okay, well, what does that mean comment reflect? I think I got called like Whispering Jack, for example, by some of my teammates, and that hurt because it was something that was true about myself. Like, I was very quiet, I was very shy, I wouldn't participate in conversations, and why wouldn't I do that? Oh, it's because I feel like I'm a loser and have nothing to contribute, and that if I say something, people will make fun of me. So there could have just been a lot more investigations of why I was feeling things to work out like, oh, okay. And if I'd done that, maybe it would have been like, oh, okay, well, this is a problem I can solve. Or, I'm feeling bad because my hair. I remember I used to always like look in mirrors and be like trying to like fix my hair because I was already starting to thin. It would go up, and then I'd look like I would see myself in a mirror and be like, oh, like I fucking look stupid. Like, you can see I'm balding. Ever since I shaved my hair off, like, that's never been a problem. Yeah. It's never, like, because now it's just like, it's all shaved off. It's fine. So spending more time looking into emotions and figuring out the root cause, like 2 or 3 levels down, rather than just a surface emotion, that would have been productive time well spent for myself.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Would 20-year-olds Kyrin think this was useful. I think if I framed it right, as long as I didn't frame it like it was a therapy type deal, if it was more just like maybe in an engineering step, like, okay, what's the next step?
Yeah, break it down.
What's beneath that? Like what's underneath that? Because I probably would have been dismissive in general. Been like, emotions, I don't really feel them. Like something like that. That would have been my response.
So actually, the other one, which is an interesting feedbacking, and this might only really apply to a select few people or like groupings in the world, but advice piece, I would have said apply more of your engineering knowledge or engineering mind to more things, and kind of goes to that in the first principle thinking, underlying, breaking it down. We did that well in engineering. It's commonplace. It's what you do. I kind of did that in training in some ways, and that probably helped out. But in a whole load of other places in my life, I didn't apply it in that particular way. And I think even just purely first principle thinking in a lot of things would have been really beneficial. And again, applies as much today, but for my 20-year-old self, first principle thinking on, decision making or return on investment or investing, all of those things, I think first principle thinking and breaking down would have been really beneficial. I didn't do that. I went of gut feels a lot of the times.
Yeah, sure.
The advice I would have given myself is like,
you hear something. I was in the gym the other day with my friend Brendan, who's a PT, and I was mentioning like, oh yeah, I do chest flies because it like works the inner chest. And he's like, that doesn't actually do that. Like, and he started explaining how the chest muscle works. I was like, well, yeah, that is just some bro science thing I'd heard 10, 15 years ago and assumed was true. Whereas, if I had spent a little bit of time like investigating how the chest muscle works. Yeah, then it would have actually become
like quite obvious. Yeah. So I think all of those... So here's a clear example. I was using the concept of type 2, type 1 muscle fiber and the way that fibers fire and the type of rep range that you do for bodybuilding, hypertrophy, maximization.
Okay.
A long time ago. Like that was 2 years after I started training. And then third year, I was like, first principles, like, okay, there's different muscle fibers in the body. Yep. What is the gastrocnemius versus your biceps? They fire in different ways. You've got different type of muscle fibers. So then you'd want to do this type of red range and all of that. I remember doing that and it came like naturally in a easy way. I wish I could apply that same concept onto very other thing. Investing. I was investing and doing things just gut feel on, I think this looks pretty cool and I think this is going to be a good word. This might not work out. If I was kind of first principle thinking on, let's just take real estate, for instance, right? And you could have been like, okay, well, where's the large inflow of people coming? Like, what normally dictates pricing of housing? Okay, well, it's home values, and then you need essentially to house people. And so it's probably the concept of how many people are in a particular area that influences the price. Then it goes into, okay, well, what's the constriction on space? Can you just build out a house basically next to it and next to it and next to it and next to it, and that doesn't increase the price? But if there's a natural constriction to the area, then you're going to have price valuation go up because you can't extend the particular living area, and then all those sort of things. I didn't think about it that way when I was younger. Absolutely not. I can say those things now because I've started to do them in other ways. That would be the advice. More first, first principle thinking. More, and kind of what I wouldn't have said this as advice to my younger self, because I wouldn't have really like understood essentially what the concept was or like what that would mean in the next iteration. But it's like, think for yourself. Almost think that almost applies to think for yourself. Whereas I would hear someone say, I remember listening to the property podcast. I think that's what the name of the podcast is. And they would talk about, we think that Adelaide's going to do better because these things. And look, they might have been correct and they might have gotten all the information and the reasonings for it. But I would at face value just be like, yes, this is this because of whatever. But I wouldn't actually put it together in my own thoughts and principles as to, this equates to what I believe, basically. So more of that would have been a betterment, I think.
Sure. I had just one thing here, and then I realized, this probably it can expand more. Self-improvement, but of virtues, of the things where it's a lot harder to measure. So when I think of something like honesty, for example, so I'd written down, you're a liar and have an expressive face, or so I'm told. So therefore, leaning into default honesty in everything as much as you can would be not only a practical strategy, but one which is like morally better in a sense. And probably then applying that to things like courage, things like discipline, perseverance, some things which I would hold as like higher values. Those, trying to work on them and self-improve on them, even though they're going to be hard to measure and the practicality of them is going to be in question, for example. So like, let's say you improve your honesty scores or your courage stats, you're leveling up. I'm reading self-leveling. Is it something like that? It's a anime manga at the moment, and solo leveling, that's what it's called. And the doing that and not being able to necessarily see the results of having, it's like, yeah, you're now more courageous. How is this going to apply to other areas of life? It would be a hard sell to my younger self for sure, because the practicality would be much more up there for myself in terms of like, okay, well, if I'm doing things, I want to see that I'm actually improving in them. But I think spending the time on them would have been useful time well spent as well, which would have improved other areas of my life, which would have been harder to see, but could have saved me a lot of like heartache or grief or things like that. Yeah, would be hard. That one would be hard to explain to my younger self. Because I remember a phase where I explicitly was like, fuck these things, like being courageous or, brave or something, like hearing advice about that and trying to apply that to getting over my anxiety of talking to women, for example, or loneliness. Like it had zero impact, and if anything, I
no
thought
applicability. You were like, no, this is detrimental.
Yes, correct, yeah. So
the other hard pill I was thinking was, and the only way that I could slide it by, I think, my younger self is to say, be strict on yourself. Be stricter on yourself, but kinder to others. And the kinder to others, I think, would be this is the bit that I want to. That's the advice. That's the influence bit. The easier in point would have been like, yeah, be stricter on yourself, because I would have egged that up and been like, absolutely, be even stricter. But kinder on others. And I think that's a bit that, if I was to reflect back and analyze, I definitely wasn't, in the sense of, again, if I was doing things, being strict on myself, I would then expect that from a lot of other people. And
you should be stricter on others.
Yeah, it's like kind of like the expectations I had on others was at a particular level. And so I remember when I was working in consulting, we had a group of maybe 10 people, 12 people that were like hard workers, right? Working plenty of hours. We got meetings, 9 p.m. at night, weekends, whatever. We're doing the work, right? It's kind of equivalent, I would imagine, of people who work in Tesla or XAI or all those places where they're just working around the clock type of deals to make something amazing happen. And working with people who would do that, awesome. And then I remember the others who wouldn't, right? And who maybe been in the company for 10 years and they wouldn't be working. And I'm like, I would have
not been, Juan would have hated me. I would not have been. I would have
been that person and be like, you're useless. Like, get out of my way. And enough. Like, I got promoted for that. There was good things that came out of it for the work. But if I had to be, again, let's reflect back on, I remember some of those moments where there was a particular individual. I remember I used to manage him and he'd been in the company for 10, 12 years, something like that. And I remember just running rings around this person. And I'd be like, what are you doing, man? Like, come on, let's step it up. And he invited me to dinner one time to his place with his family. And his family, and then I was like, nice, we had some food and whatnot. At the time, it didn't cross my mental barrier. But looking at it now, I should have been kind on others, in the sense of like, yep, I can be strict on myself and dictate that I need this and this and this. But again, there's people who are optimizing, prioritizing other things.
Wait, so did you go to the dinner?
Yeah. I went to the dinner, like met his family,
and told him in front of his wife that he needs to do better.
Yeah, and his kids. But if I looked at it and been a bit kinder on others, I might have gone, again, you can't dictate what other people will do, and again, goes all the way back to, you need to be selfishly and be obsessed about the things you care about, and don't worry about what others are doing. There are some small boundaries, obviously, if it applies very directly, like if it's your partner and, I don't know, if it's your partner, 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 and, let's say for instance, if it's your partner and you want to train, but they're like, no, we go to get drunk and party every night. Okay. There's something to be said there about some slight differentiations. Maybe you would be kind to that particular person, or you don't have to be kinder in that mindset. There's some like leveling to be done. But for the most part, kind to others kind of applies beyond the realm of the really close circle, where you'd be like, okay, just because you train with someone who you haven't trained with for 2 months, and you go, they want to do slightly less weight or be less strict about particular things, or maybe they're not doing this technique right. And it's kind of like, it's fine. Like I don't have to be annoyed about it and have to try to like reinforce something. I'll just go and do my things and then be strict on yourself, kind of others. But that's how I try to slide that in to my younger self.
Yeah. That kind of lines up with my current philosophy of when I do something bad, I could have done better. When someone else does something bad, they had no choice. It was their destiny to do that. And then vice versa. If I do something good, I had no choice. That was going to happen. If they do something good, it's like, yeah, they made that happen. And that's kind of like my version of that.
Yep.
My last one here was advice. This isn't really advice. It's pure unadulterated support and kind of like confidence boosting. So this probably would have needed multiple, like once every 6 months in my 20s of meeting whether it be a time traveler Kyrin from the future and I know it's me, or probably even would have even been better if it was someone who I didn't know but was me. There's a guy in the gym, Leo. I've nicknamed him my hype man because he hypes me up. Every time I go in there, we chat. He somehow drags the conversation back to like, what you're doing is like special. You're like, I really admire, like I watch you at times when you're doing the one-arm handstands and stuff. The meticulous nature of like writing it in the book and things like this. And when he first was saying this, it was like a little bit embarrassment. It's like, oh, shucks, man, thank you. But after like just seeing him repeatedly over a year now, and it's not every single time, but a lot of times he'll say very similar things to this, and it really is. I have noticed like a tremendous just like confidence boost from that. Yeah. It makes me feel good and gives me the energy, the willpower to be like, you know what, I can do other things, and the hard work I'm being put in for this stuff, even though I'm not doing it for him, is being recognized. So something like that, having kind of a constant, like just a reiteration of that would have been nice. I don't know. I think of like you as a parent, for example. Is there a way that you can do this because you want your child to have self-esteem, but then you give them too much and they can become a monster. Like you praise them too much, they think the praise becomes distorted, and ideally you're doing it on. That's a
very interesting word you use, because that was literally going to be my next one, which
okay.
So like my answer to that is,
go.
And the advice, and almost to like a kid. And again, this won't be everyone's cup of tea, but mine will be like, no, absolutely, become an absolute monster, uncommon motherfucker, as much as possible. And I would say that to the point of like, yes, there will be some detriments about it. Don't get me wrong, there will be. Man, if I'd given that advice to my younger self and been like, full permission, become really uncommon, become like a monster to a lot of people's eyes in the way that you're doing things. Obviously, a monster in like a bad, keep all your values and ethics in a good line.
Yeah, see when Juan's imagining a monster now, he's imagining like this fucking yoked ogre, just fucking jacked, walking around, like destroying things. But you can be a monster where you're like a slimy fucking slug that's crawling up the steps and like is weak and shit. So,
I'm thinking like monster in the sense of, so for like the advice of my younger self of, be uncommon in the, when people are like, oh, do you train a bit? And it's like, yeah, I train fucking every day, and I also run, and I also play sports, and I also like everything. Just fucking do again, but be obsessed about the things that you care about to a smart degree. Again, keeping all the values and ethics. So then to the parent, see, this is my lens and the advice I'd say is, be as monstrous and as uncommon as possible, because it is way easier to pull back the monster in that concept than to push yourself to be a monster. if you had to be lined up against for someone for a competition, or if it is just that you have to go and do something for your family, or you have to do whatever the case may be, it is so much easier to be the monster and have to pull back and restrain than having to be the one having to get pushed and be like, no, you have to go and do this. That's a way harder aspect to it. Maybe someone's got an experience the other way around and it's kind of different. I haven't. I've always seen it in it could be even more uncommon and it would have worked out even better. And then the circumstances where, okay, you got to tone it down. You got to pull it back. Easier to build that skill set than it is to build a skill set of fucking going like at it really hard in whatever it is that you're doing. So yeah, for my kids, I'd almost be like, no, build them up to be uber confident, ultra like loud. My wife disagrees with this. Like ultra boisterous, be loud, like be your own self, because at least you can pull that back. You can pull that back and become a little bit in line with more conversations. But if you don't have that, to get to be like that is a fucking journey. That is a hard journey to get there. Yeah. Because you will be pushed from the world to not be like that, because the world does not want you to be uncommon. They just want you to fit in line. The line I heard the other day was kind of like, it's not, and so we haven't experienced this. Friends that we have experienced this, and it was something that someone in the podcast was saying. It's like, not until your dad dies do you realize that's like the only man that actually wanted you to be better than them. And if you kind of like sit with that, and that could apply for like females and stuff. I don't know if it applies for females. It's very rare that you're going to come across other humans who are like, oh yeah, I really want better for you. Most generally, if you really look underneath for people, I don't think people want to, if maybe in the inner circle you would want that, but in general, just humans, you probably don't want random Joe Blow down fucking on the other side of the street. If you kind of cared about it, you know him, to be doing better than you, right? Just straight up status games, human, this goes back to evolution. Yeah, you don't want that, right? Sure. And so that concept of, if you're at the real like lowest level and you have to get up to up the ranks, general human way of being is you're going to be like, there's a push to keep you down. But if you just naturally have just this aspect of yourself, they're like, nah, fuck it, I want to like push that absolute highest levels, whatever that means and whatever concept, it's a little bit easier to then bring you down, because naturally you can very easily do that. So I guess that's that concept. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That really ties in against with the kind of extroversion, introversion book I'm reading, where that was saying.
Here's a concept. So like, I'll give you, again, people are going to think this is like maybe wild, but if my daughter, currently my oldest daughter, if she was like, I like running, and she goes like, I really want to run, right? Oh, I want to be a runner, whatever. 6 years old, let's just say. And I would be like, there would be a part of me of going like, cool, let's just have a look at what the training might look like. Okay, it's like 3 days a week and whatnot. I would look to, and again, this is a very hard thing, but look to how do you support them to be like, okay, not just be doing the thing that like a 6-year-old might do, but what is like that next level, and then the level beyond that, and then the really uncommon level, and going like, okay, can you get obsessive enough to get to those levels, and forming a path of being like, yeah, I want to push to those levels, not because that will win me the 100-meter race, that will win me the marathon, or that will make me better from a bone density perspective, which all those things are true, but just purely in the how much better can I get? And you have to become a bit of a monster to do that. You have to become really selfish to do that. And you have more opportunity to do that when you're younger than you are older. I don't think it really applies to a 78-year-old who's got grandkids. And if at that point they're like, oh no, you got to be more of a monster and like just become really good at these other things, and then get rid of all these other, people will say, responsibilities and whatnot. It's like, I just think you don't care about that anymore. There's other things that you care, and rightly so, about your grandkids and maybe the future with your wife, whatever. But when you're younger, you don't have those things. So you can care about just becoming really uncommon.
Sure. Yeah. If you have, we'll see with V, how extroverted she is. Already I would say she probably is, but you can do like tests to find out how like they call it high reactivity of when they are in a new situation, how do they respond? And if she's just kind of like, oh, there's like a fucking scary monster over here, it's Halloween coming up, and she's just like, oh, like looking at it and not freaked out by it, that's low reactivity, which generally is like an extroverted type trait, for example. So, another daughter, let's say, and she's introverted, how you could still try and get this like monster mentality into them, but the loud and boisterous nature of it, you know, that could be very detrimental in a sense, because that's like pushing someone to be something they're not, you know, pushing your kid to be up on the stage.
Yeah. And so that's the bit that I guess from that's why I wanted the advice to be like, be a monster and be uncommon, but not dictating. And like that's the advice I'd give. Just become really monstrous and like become uncommon, but not dictating as to like what that looks like. So I think by nature, it's starting to look like my daughter at the moment, V, is more on the extroverted and boisterous. Cool. Go for your life. Second one comes along and she's more introverted, like you say, then I would still be like, be uncommon. Like, you know, if you enjoy reading and having your Zen time, fucking triple down, see if you can like smash through all of this and, you know, get to a deeper level of understanding, all those sort of things. You can, again, that's why it's like, it's not directed at a particular thing. It's whatever, as you're listening to this, whatever it is that you obsess about and you seem to be naturally good at, becoming really uncommon into that path.
Yeah, it's very tricky parenting because, you know, you try and instill this, but then perhaps the kid takes it as, oh, father's love is dependent on me being monstrous. And it's like, well, what if the 9-to-5 life suits them perfectly, which it does for many people? You know, it's tricky, very tricky.
Yeah. I think in that aspect, you've got to be clear again with little ones, and I guess it would be advice to be like, it's independent. Like love is independent of all these things. Like all of these things are absolutely good, but no matter what, there's like independently love that comes, you know, from that as well. But of course, if she doesn't become uncommon, I'm gonna kick her out of the house. So you know, better get good quick. Otherwise, you're gonna have no home. No,
she'll have to come join me in the losers. In the uncommon, but not in Juan's monstrously uncommon way.
She'll have to unfortunately be a nomad traveling the world trying to become a different human. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
But again, if you're listening to this, if you've got any other tips, tricks, things that you would wish upon yourself with your 20-year-olds?
Yeah, I want to hear that as well as anything that people feel guilty about those two. So
guilty.
Send in a message via any of the social media platforms. Got links down in the show notes. As well as sending in a Boostagram would be very much appreciated.
Correct. We'll leave it there. I don't think there's any comments that came through from the tube today. So we'll leave it there. Mere mortal lights. I hope you're well. Wherever you are in the world, Juan out.
Kyrin out.
Good. Must.